The night was suffocatingly still until Emily's scream ripped through the silence, her arms clutching little Noah tightly against her chest as if the world was crumbling beneath their feet. The doorway framed her ex-husband Daniel, his face twisted in rage, his eyes burning with betrayal. He shouted words so sharp they felt like knives, and the echo of his anger crashed against the walls of the small apartment. Emily begged him to stop, her voice breaking, but Daniel's hand slammed the door shut with a deafening crack that made the floor tremble. Noah buried his face into her shoulder, trembling, whispering a question she could not answer. Sirens wailed faintly outside, weaving into the chaos inside her mind, amplifying her fear. Emily's heartbeat raced as she gasped for air, unable to steady her shaking. In this instant, her world shifted irreversibly, and she knew that nothing would ever be the same. Her past had returned like a storm, and all she could think of was survival, for her child, and for herself. Emily pressed her back against the cold wall, struggling to breathe as Noah's small fingers clung to her sleeve. She whispered that everything would be okay, though her voice betrayed her. The silence after Daniel's exit felt heavier than the chaos before, every second stretching into eternity. She scanned the room for comfort, but saw only the shadows of what had been broken. Noah asked softly if his father would return, his words piercing deeper than Daniel's rage had. Emily closed her eyes, fighting tears, and told him they were safe, even if she wasn't sure she believed it. The world outside howled with sirens, the reminder of danger closer than ever. She kissed his hair, promising herself that no matter what came next, she would not let him be taken. The storm was just beginning, but Emily swore she would stand. The night dragged slowly, as Emily rocked Noah, whispering lullabies that carried no real melody, only a desperate rhythm of survival. Her body trembled from exhaustion, yet she refused to let go. Noah asked again if everything was truly fine, his wide eyes searching for reassurance. Emily brushed the hair from his forehead, promising a tomorrow where laughter would return. But inside her chest burned with fear, her mind flashing through memories of every sacrifice she had made alone. She wondered how many battles she could still fight, how much strength remained. The quiet crack of the apartment's old beams echoed like ghosts, reminding her of the emptiness Daniel left behind. Yet holding Noah in her arms, she felt the weight of her vow. Whatever storms came, she would stand for him. The storm outside grew louder, raindrops racing across the window as if mocking the storm within her chest. Emily rose unsteadily, carrying Noah to his small bed, whispering promises she didn't know how to keep. His hand clutched hers until sleep claimed him, leaving her in the silence of the room. She stood by the window, her reflection fractured by streaks of rain, the lights of the city flickering far away like unreachable stars. She thought of the life she once dreamed of, the family she believed would never shatter, now reduced to broken fragments. Her fist tightened as she vowed aloud to herself that no court, no man, no betrayal would ever take Noah from her arms. The night swallowed her words, but in her heart, they ignited like fire. The clock ticked past midnight, each sound sharp against the silence. Emily sat alone at the kitchen table, her hands trembling around a chipped mug of untouched tea. She stared at the steam fading into nothing, her thoughts spiraling into the past. She remembered the laughter that once filled this apartment, now drowned by shouts and slammed doors. She whispered to herself that she was stronger than this pain, that she would rise, though doubt gnawed at her heart. A single tear traced her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the weight of her loneliness. Yet, beneath it all, she found a flicker of defiance. She told herself this was not the end. It was the beginning of her fight. Morning light crept through thin curtains, but Emily felt no warmth as she prepared Noah's breakfast in silence. The apartment smelled faintly of burnt toast, her tired hands moving automatically. Noah asked softly if his father would come back, and Emily's heart cracked. She told him they would be fine, though the lie stung her tongue. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger, hollow eyes betraying sleepless nights. The weight of bills piled on the table pressed heavier than the silence. She whispered to herself that today she had to stand stronger, even if her legs trembled. Noah's innocent smile as he nibbled toast became her anchor, a fragile reminder of why she endured. The world outside bustled with life, but Emily felt trapped in a quiet storm of her own making. Emily hurried Noah toward the school gates, her eyes scanning the crowd nervously. Parents chatted easily, but she felt like an outsider, her body tense as if braced for judgment. Noah waved goodbye, running ahead with laughter that briefly lifted her spirit. She called out to remind him to be careful, her voice cracking under the strain of forced cheer. A passing mother offered a polite smile, but Emily sensed the unspoken questions lingering in her glance. She turned quickly, clutching her bag tighter, whispering that appearances never showed the full truth. The playground's noise faded as she walked away, her steps heavy with dread for the long day ahead. She muttered to herself that she must endure, because Noah's joy was worth every lonely glance she endured. At work, Emily forced a smile as she typed at her desk, the office air cold and sterile. Her boss hovered nearby, reminding her of deadlines she already feared missing. She nodded obediently, though her thoughts spiraled toward Noah's needs. A coworker asked if she was all right, but Emily brushed it off, saying she just needed coffee. Her hands trembled as she reached for the cup, spilling drops onto papers that smelled faintly of ink and stress. She whispered under her breath that she couldn't afford mistakes, not now. The weight of financial survival pressed against her chest with every tick of the office clock. She told herself she would push through, but her heart felt like it was breaking under invisible chains. After work, Emily walked through the grocery store aisles, each step measured by the numbers in her head. She picked up a carton of milk, then hesitated, setting it back down with a sigh. Noah needed shoes soon, and the thought made her chest tighten. She told herself it was only money, but it felt like every choice carried the weight of survival. A couple nearby laughed over dinner plans, their carefree voices echoing against her silence. She forced herself to keep moving, whispering that she could not break here, not in front of strangers. As she reached for bread, her hands shook from exhaustion, and she told herself to just make it through today. Her strength was not in abundance, but her resolve still burned, steady and fierce. Back home, Emily tucked Noah into bed, brushing hair from his forehead as he asked softly if tomorrow would be better. She told him yes, even though her chest tightened at the lie. His eyelids fluttered shut with trust, and she sat beside him, listening to his slow breathing. She whispered that he was her reason, her anchor, her hope. The apartment creaked quietly, the night stretching heavy around her. Emily lingered by the doorway, one hand on the frame, whispering a vow to herself. She promised she would not let fear consume her. Tomorrow might bring battles, but she would fight. For Noah, she would keep standing, no matter the cost. Emily's phone buzzed with a message that chilled her blood. Daniel had filed for custody. Her hands trembled as she read the words again, her chest tightening like a vice. She whispered that he would not take Noah away, but fear gnawed at her resolve. Noah called from the other room, asking if they could play, his innocent voice piercing her despair. She forced a smile and said she would join him soon, though her throat burned with panic. The walls of the apartment seemed to close in, suffocating her with memories of Daniel's rage. Emily gripped the phone so hard her knuckles whitened, whispering a vow that no court would decide her child's future. Her strength wavered, but she refused to break. At the lawyer's office, Emily sat stiffly across the desk, her heart pounding as papers were slid toward her. The lawyer explained Daniel's claims, words dripping with accusation. Emily clenched her fists in her lap, whispering that Daniel's lies would not win. She listened, barely breathing, as every sentence painted her as unfit. The lawyer told her they would fight, but it would not be easy. Emily nodded, though her mind raced with dread about proving herself in front of strangers. The sterile room smelled faintly of ink and leather, a battlefield disguised in silence. She promised herself that she would not falter, even if the system doubted her. Later that week, Emily met her best friend Sarah at a cafe, the warm smell of coffee wrapping around them. Sarah reached across the table, saying she would not let Emily face this battle alone. Emily smiled faintly, whispering her gratitude, though tears brimmed in her eyes. She admitted she was terrified, afraid Daniel's lies might succeed. Sarah squeezed her hand, telling her that she was stronger than she realized. The noise of the cafe faded as Emily leaned into the comfort of her friend's words. For a moment, the weight of her world lightened, and she allowed herself to believe she was not alone. The following night, Emily sat at her desk, bills and custody papers spread before her like enemies in battle. She whispered Noah's name, vowing she would not fail him. Her hands ached as she filled out forms, every word a reminder of what was at stake. The apartment was silent, except for the scratching of her pen and the occasional sigh of despair. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling tears press against her lids. She told herself she had survived worse, but this fight felt endless. She stood walking to Noah's room, watching him sleep, his peaceful breath steady. She whispered a promise. She would fight for him until her last breath. At the courthouse steps, Emily stood frozen, clutching her folder of papers. Daniel's voice echoed as he walked past, smirking, his lawyer beside him. Emily's stomach twisted, but she straightened her back, whispering that fear would not rule her. She took Noah's picture from her bag, brushing her thumb across it for strength. The air felt heavy, the tall columns above her like looming judges. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, telling herself this was not just a fight for custody, it was a fight for survival. Her heart pounded, but she stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited inside. Emily sat on a park bench, watching Noah chase pigeons, his laughter echoing in the crisp autumn air. Her eyes softened, though shadows of the custody fight still weighed on her mind. A stranger approached, a man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, introducing himself as Michael. He explained that his niece went to Noah's school, and he had seen her before at pickup. Emily nodded cautiously, her guard high. Noah ran back breathless, tugging Emily's sleeve to share his joy, and Michael laughed softly at his energy. For a fleeting moment, Emily felt the strange warmth of being noticed, not as a struggling mother, but as a woman. She quickly silenced the thought, reminding herself that trust came with risk. Still, when Michael offered her a smile before leaving, Emily felt a flicker of something she thought long buried. Later that evening, Emily sat across from Sarah at her kitchen table, confessing in hushed tones about meeting Michael. She admitted that she had felt something she hadn't felt in years, a reminder of life beyond fear. Sarah raised an eyebrow, smiling knowingly, but warned her gently about opening her heart during such a storm. Emily laughed bitterly, saying her heart was already broken, so what was there to lose? Yet inside she knew Sarah was right. The risks were too many. Noah's safety had to come first. Still, Emily found herself replaying Michael's smile in her mind, a small ember flickering against the darkness of her struggle. She whispered that maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to hope again. The following weekend, Emily agreed to meet Michael again at the park, Noah skipping happily at her side. Michael brought along his niece, who played with Noah instantly, their laughter weaving together. Emily watched, hesitant, her heart both warmed and frightened. Michael spoke softly about his own struggles, losing his sister years ago and raising her child alone. Emily felt a pang of recognition, a mirror of her own strength and sorrow. She found herself opening up more than she expected, her guard lowering piece by piece. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't alone in her pain. The moment felt fragile, but real, a rare gift in the storm. She whispered to herself that maybe fate was offering her a second chance. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Emily sat at the window, staring at the city lights. She whispered Michael's name to herself, startled at the sound of it on her lips. She wanted to trust, to believe that she deserved something more than pain. But her mind replayed Daniel's betrayal, the lies that had cut her to the core. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself, torn between fear and longing. The sound of Noah's quiet breathing steadied her, reminding her of what truly mattered. Emily whispered that her heart had no space for weakness, not now, not while the battle raged. Still, she couldn't deny that Michael's kindness had cracked the armor she had spent years building. Days later, Emily found herself unexpectedly smiling as she saw Michael waiting near the schoolyard. Noah ran ahead joyfully, pulling his niece into a playful hug. Michael greeted Emily with quiet warmth, no pressure, no expectation, only presence. She admitted softly that she wasn't ready for anything more, and Michael nodded, saying he understood. His patience disarmed her, making her feel safe in a way she hadn't in years. Emily whispered that maybe trust could grow again, even in broken soil. For the first time she walked away feeling lighter, as though the chains around her heart had loosened just enough to let hope breathe. Emily received an unexpected letter in the mail, the handwriting familiar yet haunting. Her heart pounded as she unfolded the paper, realizing it was from her estranged brother, Mark. He wrote of regret, of watching from a distance, and wanting to help. Emily's hands trembled as she whispered his name, memories of childhood flooding back. She had buried him in her past, the betrayal too deep, but now he offered assistance. She slammed the letter down, telling herself she could not trust him. But the words lingered in her mind like ghosts she couldn't banish. Noah asked why she looked so pale, and Emily forced a smile, tucking the letter away. She whispered that some storms came from the past, but maybe they carried answers too. That evening, Emily told Sarah about the letter, her voice breaking as she confessed her confusion. Sarah reminded her that family wounds cut the deepest, but sometimes reconciliation was the only way forward. Emily shook her head, saying she couldn't let someone who had abandoned her back into her life. Yet part of her longed for answers, for closure. Sarah took her hand, urging her to be cautious but not to close her heart entirely. Emily whispered that she had no space for more betrayal, but deep inside, she wondered if Mark's return could change everything. The night felt colder, the silence of the apartment filled with questions she wasn't ready to face. Emily finally agreed to meet Mark at a quiet cafe, her stomach twisted with dread. When he arrived, older and weary, his eyes held guilt she couldn't ignore. He spoke softly, apologizing for leaving when she needed him most. Emily clenched her jaw, telling him his absence had nearly destroyed her. Mark lowered his head, saying he had been weak, but now he wanted to help her fight Daniel. Emily whispered that she didn't know if she could believe him, though her chest ached with longing for family. The silence between them stretched, thick with years of pain. She finally admitted she would hear him out, but trust would not come easily. Days later, Emily sat alone in her apartment, replaying Mark's words in her mind. She whispered that trust was a dangerous thing, especially when betrayal had shaped her life. Yet she couldn't deny the pull of his sincerity, the way his eyes had mirrored her pain. She opened the letter again, tracing the words with her finger as if searching for truth hidden in ink. Noah ran to her, holding a drawing of their family, and Emily's heart ached as she saw an empty space where a brother should be. She whispered that perhaps healing wasn't about forgetting, but about facing the wounds head-on. The thought terrified her, yet gave her the faintest hope of strength. Emily finally agreed to let Mark visit the apartment, her chest heavy with caution. When he arrived, Noah peeked from behind her, his wide eyes studying the man he had never met. Mark knelt softly, introducing himself with a trembling smile, saying he only wanted to help. Emily stood tense, ready to intervene, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. Noah looked at her questioningly, and she nodded slightly, giving him permission to approach. The moment felt fragile, as though one wrong word could shatter it all. Emily whispered that this was only a step, nothing more, but inside, she knew the past had finally caught up to her. The courthouse air was thick with tension, as Emily stepped inside, clutching her folder of documents. Daniel stood across the hall with his lawyer, his smirk a dagger aimed at her heart. Emily whispered to herself that fear would not win today. Her lawyer reminded her to stay calm, but her chest ached as if caged. Noah's photo was tucked in her pocket, her anchor against the storm. The voices around her faded into a blur of footsteps, papers, and echoes of past betrayal. Emily closed her eyes, promising Noah silently that she would fight with everything she had. The sound of the bailiff's call jolted her, and she straightened her shoulders, walking into the courtroom. Her battle had begun. The trial began with Daniel's lawyer speaking first, his words sharp and calculated, painting Emily as unstable and unfit. Emily's heart thudded painfully as whispers filled the courtroom. She forced herself to keep her gaze steady, though every accusation stung. Her lawyer leaned forward, urging her to breathe, reminding her that truth would speak louder in time. Daniel glanced at her with satisfaction, but she refused to let him see her break. The judge's gavel silenced the murmurs, his eyes coldly impartial. Emily whispered under her breath that this fight was not about her dignity, but Noah's future. She straightened in her chair, clutching her pen tightly as if it were a weapon. When Emily took the stand, her voice trembled at first, but she steadied herself by picturing Noah's smile. She spoke of sleepless nights, of sacrifices made, of love stronger than betrayal. Daniel's lawyer fired questions designed to break her, but Emily held firm, repeating her truth. She told the court that Noah was her entire world, her reason to breathe. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but her voice grew steadier with each word. She whispered a vow aloud, saying she would never abandon him, no matter the cost. Silence filled the room as her words hung in the air like a promise carved from steel. Daniel finally took the stand, his voice laced with false charm as he described himself as the better parent. Emily clenched her fists as he twisted the truth, her stomach churning with anger. His lawyer emphasized her financial struggles, her sleepless nights, trying to frame them as failures. Emily's lawyer rose, presenting evidence that dismantled Daniel's facade piece by piece. Each document revealed his neglect, his history of anger, his inability to provide stability. Emily's heart pounded as Daniel's smirk faded, replaced by unease. For the first time she saw cracks in his armor, and hope surged within her chest. She whispered to herself that the truth was finally shining through. The final moments of the hearing stretched endlessly, the courtroom silent as the judge reviewed the evidence. Emily sat rigid, clutching Noah's photo in her lap. Daniel avoided her gaze, his confidence gone. The judge's words rang out at last, acknowledging the sacrifices she had made, recognizing her as Noah's best chance for a stable future. Emily's chest released a sob she had held for months, tears streaming freely down her face. She whispered Noah's name with trembling joy, knowing she had won the battle. The gavel fell, and though victory came with scars, it was hers. She closed her eyes, breathing for the first time in what felt like years. That night, Emily returned home with Noah, exhaustion weighing heavy but victory warming her chest. Noah asked if everything would be okay now, his eyes wide with trust. Emily knelt, whispering that he was safe, always safe. She hugged him tightly, inhaling the familiar scent of his hair, her tears dampening his shirt. The apartment felt lighter, no longer a cage, but a sanctuary. Emily whispered that the world had tried to take them apart, but love had kept them together. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it was true. Noah smiled and told her she was his hero. Her heart broke and healed all at once. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the windows as Emily cooked pancakes for Noah. He giggled, helping stir the batter, his small hands messy with flour. Emily laughed, the sound strange but healing, as if joy was returning after years of silence. She told him that life wouldn't always be easy, but together they could face anything. Noah grinned, saying pancakes made everything better. For the first time, the apartment smelled of comfort, not fear. Emily whispered that their home was finally theirs again, not Daniel's shadow. She watched Noah devour his breakfast with innocence that felt like a blessing. Emily sat in the park again, watching Noah play, this time with a peace she hadn't felt before. Michael walked over, asking softly how the hearing had gone. Emily told him she had won, her smile genuine, though tinged with exhaustion. Michael congratulated her, his eyes filled with admiration. She admitted quietly that she wasn't sure about the future, but for now, she could finally breathe. Michael offered to sit with her, no expectations, only presence. Emily nodded, grateful for companionship that didn't demand. She whispered to herself that healing began not with forgetting, but with learning to live again. That evening, Emily stood at the window, watching the city lights shimmer like distant stars. She whispered that the storm had passed, though the scars remained. She touched the glass, imagining the years she had lost to fear and betrayal. Yet inside, she felt strength where only pain had lived before. She turned back to Noah's room, seeing him sleep peacefully, his chest rising and falling with innocence. Emily whispered that her journey was not over, but the hardest battle was behind her. She smiled faintly, knowing that survival had transformed into hope. The final night closed with silence, broken only by Noah's gentle breathing. Emily stood outside his door, her hand resting on the frame, whispering a promise. They would be okay. She stepped inside, sitting beside him, her smile unguarded for the first time in years. She whispered that they were stronger now, that love had carried them through the storm. Noah stirred, smiling in his sleep as if he heard her vow. Emily leaned back, exhaling deeply, the weight of the past lifting from her shoulders. The night was quiet, but her heart was alive, beating with courage. Their fight was not over, but their strength was undeniable.